Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today with my May 2020 media wrap-up. So this is going to be all of the media that I consumed in the month of May, excluding books. If you do want to hear what books I read last month, definitely check out my May book wrap-up video where I talk about all 9 books that I read in May 2020. Today though, in the world of media, all I consumed last month outside of books was movies. So I do have 15 films to talk about today, which is a lot more than I've talked about in the past in these videos. So I will mention that my thoughts on these are going to be very brief, not detailed at all. If there is something you want to hear more about, please let me know down in the comments below and I'll try to elaborate. But just in terms of the sheer number I have to talk about today, which I know 15 is nothing to some people, but to me it's a lot. So because of that, I am going to keep my thoughts as brief as humanly possible. So without further ado, and because we have 15 films to talk about, let's dive right in. First up is a movie from 2007, and this is B Movie. So this has Jerry Seinfeld as the lead character of our main B, and this is a family film that is kind of just forgettable. There's nothing terribly wrong with it. There was nothing about it that really grabbed me either. So basically in this film, the bees discover that humans are using their honey. And so the Jerry Seinfeld bee decides, no, that's not okay. I'm taking them to court to try to get the rights or to get our honey back. And so he does that, which is obviously ridiculous because he's a bee. And then you think the movie's going to be over at that point, but that's really only about half the film. The second half of the film is this whole other subplot that just kind of takes the film into territories that I didn't enjoy. Not that it was, offensive or bad or anything like that. It was just, it got even sillier than it was to begin with, which is saying something for a movie about talking bees. So this one was inoffensive family fun that I'll probably never put on again. I ended up giving B Movie 3 out of 5 stars. Next up is a film called The Lodge from 2019. So this actually released on Blu-ray in the month of May, and then a couple days later, or maybe even the same day, I don't know, I guess, but very shortly after, it released on Hulu as well. So I was able to watch it that way because it looked like something that was right up my alley. So I wanted to give it a shot. And I'll be honest, I was very impressed with this film. This is a movie about these 2 kids who are, their mother has died. And so they are going to spend the holiday with their father and their father's new, I believe it's his fiance at this point. And they don't get along because the kids look at the fiance as basically the reason why the mother is no longer with them. And so tensions are already up, but things start going, weird things start happening at this titular lodge that they're staying at. Eventually the father leaves, and so it's just these 3 characters, and they do such a wonderful job together. The story itself is interesting, but I think kind of the atmosphere of the whole thing is really what did it for me. So this is very much a slow burn character study horror film, psychological horror film. And it is just one of those films where it feels like they set out to do something very specific and they succeeded in that. I really like this one. I know this one gets called boring or too slow by some people, and I can see where that's coming from. But for me, I thought it was paced really well. And it just kept delivering kind of small things that kept me hooked all the way through. I really like this one, and I think it's a bit underrated from what I've seen about it so far. So check this one out if it sounds like something that you'd be interested in. Like I said, it is available on Hulu. So I gave The Lodge from 2019 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is another one that I watched on Hulu from 2019, and this is called Body at Brighton Rock. So this story is about our main character, this young girl who is working for this, I think it's like a national park or something like that, in the mountains, wherever it is. And she decides that she'll take over her friend's route that day to like hang up flyers or whatever down a trail, because she wants her friend to be able to spend time with this guy that she likes. So the difference here is that this route that she's taking is like the more advanced trail that she's not used to. She's not much of an outdoorsy person, even though she's working for the park system or whatever you would call it. But anyway, as she's going, she eventually reaches the top of this mountain, and she looks down and sees that there's a body down there. So she calls in, and they tell her that she has to wait for them to get there, and because it's getting late, they won't be able to send somebody out until the next day. So just the whole premise of this thing is so ridiculous to me, because this girl who's, probably making minimum wage, doesn't know really anything about what she's doing. She's just posting up signs. They expect her to wait, 12 hours or whatever it is through the middle of the night with this body. Just the whole premise was ridiculous. And if you can see, I have the poster up here. Hopefully I find the right one. It promises something that it doesn't. Yes, there is a bear involved in this, but it's so minor, and by the time it gets there, it's just too little too late at that point. I like the idea of this, a survival film, but it's not really a survival film. I watched a film called Backcountry a couple years ago, and that was from Scream Factory, which I can't reach it because it's a little bit further away now. But that one I thought was okay, but it's much better than what Body at Brighton Rock has to offer, because it's more of what I was looking for. So this one was all right, definitely a lower budget film, but there's just not much substance to it. So I ended up giving Body at Brighton Rock from 2019 2 out of 5 stars. Next up is a horror classic, one of the 3 penultimate slasher films, and that is Friday the 13th. So I watched the original one from 1980, which this is like the complete set, which is really cool. I'm just going to show this a little bit. Yes, I love this, but I actually didn't even watch this version of it. I'm going to put this down because it's heavy. I ended up watching the digital version that I own on my ultraviolet version or whatever on Vudu. But this, of course, what's there to say about Friday the 13th? If you want my full thoughts on this series, there is a full series review available on Cinefessions.com. It is a few years old at this point, but I'm sure my thoughts are pretty much the same as they are now as they were then. But of course, Friday the 13th is a great film. I don't think it's as good as Halloween, and I don't think it's as scary as A Nightmare on Elm Street, but it has some really fun kills, and it's just iconic. He doesn't really get the iconic mask in this film, which no spoilers for any of these, but I'm sure you've probably seen it. But so it's not iconic because of that. It's just iconic because of everything else, Camp Crystal Lake, and so on and so forth. I love this. A very early role for Kevin Bacon, some awesome kill scenes. What's not to like here? I really enjoy this film. So I gave Friday the 13th 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is actually a short film that I found on Amazon Prime, and it's called The Violence Movie. So you might be familiar with this if you follow a lot of the boutique label releases, because this does have a DVD that has both The Violence Movie Part 1 and Part 2, which these are shot on video, ultra low budget films from 1988 is this first one. What's notable about this is that somehow these 2 brothers that made this ultra low budget backyard film talked the iconic Harry Manfredini to do the score for this re-release of these short films, who of course is the person who just did Friday the 13th. That's what he's best known for. So the fact that his score is on here is just bonkers to me. But the film, basically the serial killer escapes, and he is walking down the road, and he comes across this person's house, and he's going to go kill more people. It is super short. It's like 15 minutes, incredibly low budget. It's shot on video, low budget. Like I said, it's literally like these 2 brothers decided to make this horror film, and somehow it got a following of some sort, at least in their hometown, and then kind of spread from there. So, I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars just as kind of a default rating for it, because it is what it is. It's not something that's supposed to be magical or I guess it is memorable just because of how low budget and ridiculous it is. But if you're looking for a good shot on video schlock, definitely check out Sledgehammer. This was released by Intervision, which is a branch of one of the major companies, but I can't remember exactly which one offhand now. But that is the worst movie I've ever seen. But it's so much fun because it's just so bad and so goofy. It's great. So check that one out if you want to watch some legit shot on video 80s slasher gem. But this is fine. It is what it is. So you can check out both of these. I think they're both on Amazon Prime. I only watched the first one, but it's there if you're interested. So 2.5 out of 5 stars for The Violence Movie from 1988 rather. Next up was one that we watched on Disney Plus. Finally, we watched Frozen 2 from last year. So I am a huge fan of the original film. I loved it the first time I saw it, and then I worked at a video store. I managed 2 video stores for a while. I used to watch it there all the time just because it was family friendly and had catchy music, which I used to watch that. I used to watch Michael Jackson, This Is It, because it had great music, and I used to watch the Katy Perry movie. Shouldn't have said that, but I did because I liked the music. So, there's a theme there. I liked good music playing while I was working, which I know people are saying, no, that's terrible music, but whatever, to each their own. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. I love Frozen. I think the music's excellent. I think the story's so much fun. It's hilarious. It's just a great Disney film. It's iconic in my eyes. And Frozen 2, nowhere near the same level that the original was at. So, I think my biggest problem here was that once we started reaching the climax, I thought we were only about halfway through the film because I couldn't believe that this was the only hurdles that these characters were going to have to overcome in this film. It just feels so weak and so lame compared to what the characters go through in the first movie. So I think that alone is kind of what dropped my rating a little bit. I think it's, the characters are still great. I love Olaf. I love Olaf very much, but I don't know, just there wasn't a ton of new characters that were very interesting. I don't know. It's kind of okay. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. But when you put it against the original, it just doesn't stand up. So I gave Frozen 2 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I should mention that I always heard going into this that there was just moments in this that just made people cry. And they couldn't believe that there was such a powerful moment to make them cry in a kid's movie. And I just did not have that same experience whatsoever. And to talk about why would be getting into spoiler territory, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, I just didn't have that experience. So anyway, Frozen 2, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is a film from 1976. We have All the President's Men, starring Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. They play Woodward and Bernstein, respectively. And this is the story of Watergate and how these 2 journalists help take down Nixon and expose him for the fraud that him and his party was committing. So the reason I did this, and I was going to talk about podcasts I listened to as well, which there was only one, so I'll talk about it now and just kind of intermingle it here. But I listened to a podcast called Slow Burn, and I listened to season 1 of that podcast, which covers Watergate, which is, this. And so I was fascinated by it. There was so much I didn't know about Watergate and about Nixon that it just really drew me in, and I loved it. I think it's an excellent podcast. I'm actually listening through season 2 right now, which is about the Clinton Monica Lewinsky scandal, and it's awesome. So anyway, because I listened to that and learned so much about it, I had to check out this film. I've owned this for a long time. I actually have it's the Digibook version of it, which is really cool, and I've just never watched it. So I wanted to check it out, and I'm so glad I did. Like, this film felt so ahead of its time. I don't know if you guys have heard of a genre, I guess, or a style called mumblecore. It was popular a handful of years ago. I don't even know if there's still mumblecore directors or anything, but it reminded me of this a little bit because it's very clear that a lot of the dialogue is just kind of them improvising in the moment, but it's all kept in, and it just makes the whole thing feel so real and so legitimate. I love this movie. It is so well directed. The cast is incredible. This makes me want to be a journalist. Like this and something like Zodiac, they're films that make being a journalist feel so special and so like you can do so much good. And I think that's what makes this so awesome. It's just a very specific time in 1970, in the early to mid 70s, and covers such an important part of American history. I cannot recommend this film enough. I really like this one. I gave All the President's Men from 1976 4.5 out of 5 stars. We're going to have a bit of a run here of movies that I watched actually from my physical collection, so that's exciting. But next up is The Night of the Hunter from 1955, and this is the only film that the legendary actor Charles Laughton ever directed, which is a real shame because this is something special. So I won't talk too much about this just because I watched this with a purpose. Kind of behind the scenes, I do have a new series brooding, and this was the first of it. So it's called Cinefessions Conquers the Criterion Collection, and it is just simply me watching through my Criterion Collection releases because I own so many that I haven't seen. this is one of the first ones I ever remembered buying, so I wanted to watch this one first. This is a film that I think when I wrote my little blurb review on Letterboxd, I said, I feel like I'm giving this too low of a rating while at the same time giving it too high of a rating based on my enjoyment of it. But that said, this is clearly a special piece of cinema. And it took me watching through the special features to really appreciate kind of the juxtaposition that was going on between some of the overacting of some of the actors and then just the real natural acting of others. But once you kind of get that context, which is what the Criterion Collection does so well, is give you context, you really start to appreciate it for what it is. So I loved this film. Has some of the best imagery I can remember seeing. It's fantastic. I will talk more about it when I do my Cinefessions Conquers the Criterion Collection episode 1, but I will say I gave Night of the Hunter 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have another classic, and this is from 1977. We have Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And as I mentioned in my TBW video, I did do the despecialized edition, which essentially is the best version of the theatrical version that you could find. So somebody cobbled together like the best elements available to recreate the theatrical version. So like some scenes that have no special edition changes will just be the Blu-ray, like from this right here. And then some scenes that do have some of those changes, you'll see like a different format, whether it's DVD or VHS, whatever it is. It will be, I guess it would have to be VHS. It will be upscaled so that it doesn't look terribly different from the Blu-ray. And frankly, they do a really good job. It's, very difficult to tell, at least when I was going through it, I wasn't looking for it. So it's not terribly easy to tell the difference between those scenes that are upscales from lower quality elements and that are just legitimate Blu-ray transfers. So I think they do a really, really good job with this, and you're getting the theatrical version, which I know some people live by and die by. So myself, as I mentioned before, the first time I saw it, I think was with this box set. So I've only seen the special editions until this one I found later on. And so I don't care that this is the theatrical version. The reason I did this was because I just read the novelization of Star Wars, A New Hope. And so I figured that the theatrical version would be more akin to what the novelization, represented. And, I'm really glad I read the novelization because it gave me just an even more appreciation for this film, watching it for the umpteenth time. I don't know how many times I've seen it now, but I love this movie. Not too much to say. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that come my birthday, I will have the Skywalker Saga on Blu-ray, but we'll see if my family hooks me up like I'm hoping, or on Blu-ray rather, on 4K. And so at that point, I will do a review of all the films. But some of these are, I have reviews I had written years ago, and I actually never posted them. So just a waste. But either way, this is just a fantastic film. I mean, it's Star Wars. Of course it's great. You know that. You don't need me to tell you that. So I gave Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is a film from 2018 called Trespassers. And this was on Hulu, I believe, as well, which I've mentioned quite a few times in this wrap-up video. But I'll be honest with you, I thought this was a, mid-80s slasher film. But it turns out it's from 2018, so it's newer, and two, it's not even a slasher, it's a home invasion film more than anything. So basically these four friends, well, I guess the two girls are friends, and they both bring their significant others. They all meet up in what is essentially an Airbnb. They rent this house for the weekend, and there is some tension amongst the four of them to begin with, but then a stranger knocks on the front door, says that they are a neighbor and would like to use the phone because their cell phone's dead or whatever the situation is. They kind of huddle about it, and one of them decides, you know what, I'm letting them in. So they come in, and so then things go from, here to here, and then something happens while that person's there. They go up a notch, but then even something else happens. So it's just like it keeps escalating on. But this film is interesting because I love the premise. Home invasion films are some of my favorite. It's one of my favorite subgenres of horror. So this film is right up my alley. And some of the use of color, another thing I love in this movie. I think they do a really good job with that. So from a technical standpoint, I think this film is really good. The setup for it is also very good. It's just the kind of the climax and the execution of the rest of it that leaves a little bit to be desired. If you can get past the fact that these characters are going to be making terrible choices that don't really make much sense, then you might appreciate it. at least as well as I did. I gave this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's something that I won't watch again, but I thought it was okay. It was very middle of the road to me. It's just, I wish there was something more in the second half of the film than what we get. But, that said, if you like home invasion thrillers with a very unique visual style, I think there is something here that's worth watching if you don't have to pay for it, which if you're already paying for Hulu, you're not paying extra for it. So you might give it the 90 minutes or whatever it is that it's required. It's okay. Nothing I'll ever watch again. So I gave Trespassers from 2018 to, oh, you know what I will say? It does have Mona from Pretty Little Liars. So that was cool if you're a Pretty Little Liars fan. But anyway, I digress. I give Trespassers from 2018 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next, we have a shot-for-shot remake. This is from 2016, and it's Cabin Fever. So I've heard nothing good about this film heading into it, but I was actually in the middle of doing my project behind me, moving cases or filling cases with their cover art. And I decided I want to put something on the TV. So I ran across the Cabin Fever remake on Netflix. And so I put it on. And it was okay. I think the original film, when I first saw it in theaters, I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't love it. But I think I appreciated it more on repeat viewings when I ended up buying it on DVD eventually. But with this shot-for-shot remake, it's a shot-for-shot remake. What is there to expect here from, that's different from the original? Some things I think it does worse are some of the character choices that these actors make. I find some of the characters just unbelievably grating. I did not like spending time with them. Others I thought were fine. I thought they were good. I think the acting is fine across the board. Nothing special, but, it is what it is. This is another one that, much like Trespassers, it's very hard to talk critically about a film when it's very middling, and that's exactly what Trespassers was, and that's exactly what this Cabin Fever film is from 2016. Very middle of the road. So if you've seen the original, you really don't have any reason to watch this remake. I don't think it does anything better. The only reason it might be worth watching is for gorehounds, because the gore in this is incredible, which I know I just said it doesn't do anything better, but it probably does do the special effects just a little bit better from what I remember from the original Cabin Fever, but it's been years since I've seen the original now, so I could be wrong on that as well, but I don't know. Either way, gorehounds, maybe check it out if you have Netflix. Otherwise, don't waste your time. So I gave Cabin Fever from 2016 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next up was another one I found on Hulu, just kind of scrolling through, trying to find something to watch. I watched a lot of these on my week off I took in the month of May, and during nap time, I just had to put on something. And so this was one that I came across at that point as well, and it's called Stung, and it was released in 2015. And this is a film that is so much better than it has any right to be. This is a lower budget creature feature from, 2015. I mean, what you would expect is that it's going to be something terrible like all those, made for Sci-Fi Channel movies, but this is so much better than those. Basically, we have our two main characters. They run a catering business, and they are catering this, this rich person's event. And then all of a sudden, these killer wasps show up and start mutating, and eventually they become human-sized. So if that sounds fun, and you like comedy with your creature feature, and you like Lance Henriksen, which frankly, with a lot of these, they'll put that big name like Lance Henriksen on their box art just to sell units, and he'll have like a 10-second cameo. Here in Stung, he's a major player. He plays a big part in this film, and he does a great job of adding some like gravity to this film that makes it just feel more legitimate than maybe it even is. But I really enjoyed this one. It was fun. The plot is very thin. Once the killer wasps start appearing, basically it's just trying to survive at that point. And so they're running through the house, they're running through the woods, trying to survive. So, it's light on plot, but heavy on action. And what also shocked me was how many practical effects there were in this film. It was not a CGI only film. Of course there is CGI, maybe half and half, but with the CGI looks pretty good, but the special effects, the practical effects rather, they look incredible. So it's worth watching. It's awesome. It is on Hulu, and I highly recommend it. So Stung from 2015, I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. So down to our final 3 here. Next up is from 2012, Black Rock. And this is another one that I remember from my video store days, and people would bring it back and talk to me about it, and it was very mixed reviews, but they would compare it to, basically it's like a female Deliverance, is what I often hear it referred to as. And I can see where that's coming from. That's essentially what it is in a way. So these 3 girls are going off on a vacation to this island that they used to visit as children. And there is tension amongst a couple of them because of something that happened with a man a few years prior, whatever. So eventually they come across this group of 3 dudes who are ex-military. One of the guys eventually tries to force himself on one of the women, and she hits him with a rock, and that ends up killing him. So the 2 men then want revenge, and that's what the rest of the film is them trying to get revenge, and the women just trying to survive, basically. So this is that is exactly what this film is. It's bogged down quite a bit, though, from the relationships of the 3 women, kind of the drama that is there between the 3 women. And it's not that it's bad. It's just that I didn't really care that much. I wanted more action. I wanted more chase than there is, which, I mean, mind you, the whole film is chase, but it's like so much of it slows down because of these conversations that they have, which can work really well. Obviously, I've demonstrated before that I love slow burns. I love character studies, but here I just didn't care as much. It just felt like this petty argument that really meant nothing, that was blown out of proportion and still kind of overtook their lives. So I don't know, it just felt silly, and I didn't care about that aspect of it, which plays a major role in the film. So because of that, it kind of bogged down the rest of it. The action pieces, though, I think are fun when we do get to them, and the whole premise is really cool. So, this one was okay. Again, another one that I think it set out to do something very specific, and it achieves that. What that's worth to you will vary, but for me, it was worth about 3 out of 5 stars. So I gave Black Rock, like I said, 3 out of 5 stars. So this next one, along with probably The Lodge as being one of my biggest surprises this month, is called The Vast of Night. And this is from 2019. It was actually just released on Amazon Prime the day I watched it. So the night before, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I happened to run across a tweet that was it was a retweet from somebody that mentioned that this film was coming out, and it said, if you like radio dramas or you like The Twilight Zone, check this one out. And so it sounded right up my alley. If I remember, I'll try to put the tweet up here on the screen, but it sounded right up my alley. So I decided to give it a shot because it was on Amazon Prime. So it was free to watch. And man, this one really blew me away. I really enjoyed this. This is another one. This is a very slow moving character piece, but it is so competently done. Again, that would probably be the best way I can describe it. The whole premise is that we are in this very small Texas town. I think it's Texas, somewhere down south, this very small town. And basically the entire city, it's the 1950s. The entire city is at like the local high school football game, except for a select few, those being our 2 main characters. One who is he's a DJ there. And the other one is the switchboard operator in their small town. And so they're friends. And so there's this one shot, which if you guys have watched or listened to my podcast or just followed me on Twitter, I love long takes. Those are my favorite things in films. And it's just filled with them. It's almost like watching a stage play at points, but just with a very interesting camera. I think most of the camera work was done on what appeared to me at least to be a droid, but I think it does it so well that it doesn't feel cheap like that sometimes can. It was so interesting. But anyway, we're following these two characters mostly, and they start getting calls that people are seeing something in the sky and what's going on. So of course this is, an alien related film, but done in that radio drama style of the 1950s, and it feels very reminiscent of a Twilight Zone episode. This was awesome. I think it's just so amazing what this filmmaker was able to do on a low budget, and just the town itself. I don't know if it was built or if it was just, filmed on location or what the deal was, but it was just so realistic and legitimate. And I think that is something that's so impressive for such a low budget film. Clearly, this director is talented, and I cannot wait to see more from him. I really like this one. Again, if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can watch it for free on Amazon Prime. If that sounds interesting to you, if you are okay with something that's going to be slow, there are moments in there where it's like 7 minutes, maybe more, of just a person talking, and the camera's just watching that person talk. But I thought it was so fascinating, and just kind of an experiment done in the best, most successful way that one could hope for. I really liked this one. So I gave The Vast of Night from 2019 4 out of 5 stars. And the last movie I'm going to talk about today was the last film I watched in May, and that is Suicide Squad from 2016. So this is a movie that was on my May TBR and my April TBR. So I was very happy I actually got to it. I think it was like the very last day of the month of May. So I'm glad that I finally got to revisit this one. So this is one that I know gets a ton of hate, but I really enjoyed it when I saw it in theaters when it was new. And ever since then, though, all I hear is all the negativity. So I was thinking to myself, maybe this wasn't as good as I remembered it being. But no, this movie's fantastic. I love this film, and I don't care who hates me for it. I enjoy the heck out of this movie. So, really, you have all these villains, but who stands out? Harley Quinn and Deadshot. It's really their movie, and I'm okay with that. The others don't have a whole lot going on, but that's all right because Deadshot and Harley Quinn are so awesome in this. Like, I just want to see a movie with those two. Like, it would be awesome. But, Harley Quinn is incredible. Margot Robbie is such a fantastic actress, and she does bring so much to Harley. Like, it's just so great. And of course, Will Smith is just amazing. I love Will Smith. So I don't know. This gets so much hate, and I just don't know why. Basically the story here is this group of villains are put together to stop this evil force that is trying to take over the world, basically, in Central City, I believe is what it's called. And so they put together these villains to try to stop them. And I don't know. I don't know what people were expecting from this. Like, it is just a balls out action film. And if you go into it expecting anything more, yeah, you're probably going to be disappointed. But for me, I don't know. I just like this movie a hell of a lot. I actually picked up the novelization to this recently, and it's a thick one. And so I'm really excited to read it to kind of learn more. So one disappointing thing is that the 4K disc only has the theatrical version, and the Blu-ray has the extended cut. So because I specifically watched this because I wanted to knock out a 4K movie from my collection, I watched the theatrical version again. So I still haven't seen the extended, which I do want to check out because I like this just so much. So love this movie. Don't think it deserves any of the hate that it gets. I don't know. I just really like it. So I gave Suicide Squad 4.5. Oh yeah, 4.5 out of 5 stars. And that's just the way it's going to be. All right, so that's going to do it for my May movie wrap-up. Yeah, it's a media wrap-up technically, but this month it was all movies. So these were, of course, just the physical ones I watched, and then all of those digital ones I talked about as well. So a 15-movie month for me, which is really good for me. I know others probably quadruple that in many months, but for me, that was a very strong month of film watching, so I'm very pleased with it. Let me know down in the comments below, what did you think about some of these films that I talked about? Did you like them more than I did, less than I did? I'd love to have more of a conversation with you guys down in the comments below. Also, do you guys like these videos? Is it worth talking about every movie I watched in the month, or should I just stick to the ones I talked about in my TBW? So let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are there as well, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time if we only want to talk about the 4 or 5 I talk about in my TBW. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to Cinefessions here on YouTube if you haven't already. And if not, thank you anyway for watching. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.